100 years after his birth and more than 50 years after his death, John Kennedy remains one of the most enduring and, yes, iconic figures in American history.
If somebody leaves and they've had an emotional impact, they've had an aha moment, they've been reduced to tears, they've been celebratory, they've had moments of joy, then I know we've done our job. And in this case, we've had a lot of that sort of feedback with JFK. So I feel, on that regard, it's a real big success. And I think that's because there's living memory.
The fact that so many people that were alive during that time have memories of that happening and are really touched by some of the things that they see because it brings back those memories to them.
Well, everybody going through the exhibit of a certain age, if they were 9 or 10 or older in 1963, they remember exactly where they were when they heard the news of the president's assassination.
Here's a bulletin from CBS News. From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
The process is you first develop the storyline, the narrative, and we decide how we want to tell the story. And in this case, we started with the assassination because we all know how it ended. It's like the Titanic sank. So we wanted to deal with that and get it out of the way and then create a more positive story to celebrate the entirety of his life.
We wanted to focus more on some of the lesser known things and also how he related to Oregon.
The thought that went through my mind was, how do we make it the Oregon story, since we're the Oregon Historical Society?
And the fact is that the Oregon primary actually meant something back in 1960, was a key step in Kennedy claiming the presidential nomination.
That challenge of trying to take a group of objects and create a cohesive story around them, in addition to objects that were on loan from our major lender, Pete Mark. We also had objects from the Shapell Manuscript Foundation, objects from our own library, the OHS Research Library. And so just taking all of those and kind of putting them into categories and creating a narrative around them so that they would all make sense and kind of hang together and not just be a typical sort of timeline experience, but to actually tell a story and tell the story of his life and have the objects assist with that story.
One of the best phone calls I ever received in my life was the phone call I received a day or two after I accepted the job here back in 2011. And it was from Pete Mark, who I knew from my prior life in public service, and who called to say congratulations and could he have lunch with me. And I said, sure, when would you like to do it? And he said, how about today? 2 hours later, he was here. We went off to lunch at the Arlington Club, and he expressed his love of history. I knew a little bit about his collection. He told me more about it. And he volunteered, raised his hand, and volunteered his willingness to help get this place moving and to provide some resources, financial resources, to get OHS back on its feet again, and wanted to share, finally, he had never shared them before outside his family and friends, to share his collection. So fast forward these 6 years later, and we've had 5 exhibits, of course, with Pete's collection that have really been world-class exhibits that have helped build record attendance here and really put OHS on the map again here in Portland and in Oregon. And the Kennedy exhibit is the final one we did, and he thought it was the best one. I agree. I'll always remember his final visit here to OHS was on March 22nd. It was the dinner we had in celebration of the opening of the Kennedy exhibit, and he was in such great form, surrounded by family and friends and those who loved him and cherished him and who he loved and cherished right back. And he, at 91 years old, without a note in his hand, he gave a beautiful speech, paying, as he always did, not saying, look what I did, look what Pete Mark did, but it's look what everybody else did. Look what together we did with this exhibit. And I can't think of a better legacy for Pete than this wonderful exhibit that he wanted to share with Oregonians and with people from across the country and the world. And my friendship with him is something that I will always cherish. Well, I think visitors to museums now, especially younger visitors, want action. You know, this is the video generation. They don't just want to look at another framed artifact on the wall. And that's why this exhibit has a lot of interactives. You can watch the Kennedy-Nixon debates. That was one of my requests. You got to be able to watch the first presidential debates in American history, and ones that really, rocketed Kennedy to the presidency. And then the video room, our great little movie room, where in the 1960s style couches, you can watch the Kennedy inaugural, the Ich bin ein Berliner speech, and of course the Jackie tour of the White House. And then the great idea our designers came up with of the game, the US versus Russia Cold War game, to get kids really involved and be able to have fun. We want them to learn something at the exhibit, of course, but having fun is important too. And if you're going to have fun and, oh, by the way, learn something, that's a bonus.
I found the most inspiring that he had a lot of physical problems, a lot of health problems, but he persevered and actually became a war hero.
Everyone, reflects back on the tragedies that befell the Kennedy family as they look at the great iconic photo we have of the 9 Kennedy children. And the first 4 who died did not die from natural causes. Everyone remembers those stories. Everyone feels that they know the Kennedys. They've been such a part of our life for well over half a century. Everybody seems to have a connection with them.
I think it's important to know that it is really the Kennedy exhibit on the West Coast. It's important, and when people are in town, they should come see it, because other than the library in Boston, there isn't anything like it around. So it does tell a story. It is significant. He was a significant president. I think it's interesting how much he did or set in motion in such a short period of time. And I think the process it's the secret of what we do. It's the best part of working in this field, because it's a creative process and you get to have an outcome from the creative process. And much like artists, it's an art form for those of us that work in history.
Everyone is voting for Jack, 'cause he's got what all the rest lack. Everyone wants to back Jack. Jack is on the right track, 'cause he's got high hopes. He's got high hopes. 1960's the year for his high hopes. Come on and vote for Kennedy. Vote for Kennedy, and we'll come out on top. Oops, there goes the opposition girl. Oops, there goes the opposition girl. Oops, there goes the opposition girl. Pop. K-E-double-N-E-D-Y. Jack's the nation's favorite guy. Everyone wants to back Jack. Jack is on the right track, 'cause he's got high hopes. He's got high hopes. 1960's the year for his high hopes. Come on and vote for Kennedy. Vote for Kennedy. Keep America strong. Kennedy, he just keeps rolling up. Kennedy, he just keeps rolling up.